Well, as I was saying,
You know that old-timey sound from early Hollywood films?
I telegraphed him at the same time as I did you all.
Listen to that accent.
If he comes, I shall retire to bed.
The one that sounds like it's neither here
I just ran into Deirdre in the hall and she was almost hysterical.
nor there.
I don't know what you mean.
It's as if it's stuck somewhere in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean.
Since we're all strangers to each other, let's get acquainted with a drink, shall we?
What if I told you that accent from the golden age of American cinema can partly be traced all the way back here?
Really?
Really?
Back when American cinema was first taking off, the movies were a kind of one-dimensional experience. Grainy, black and white film with no sound. The technology just wasn't advanced enough. But then came the talkies.
But his smile is as cute as can be.
The ability to record sound with motion pictures raised the curtain to a new era in movie making. It created stars out of young dreamers such as Cary Grant, Katharine Hepburn, Vincent Price, Bette Davis and Christopher Plummer. But the arrival of films with sound created a new dilemma. It had to do with the way the actors sounded, how they spoke. Like anywhere else in the world, the actors' accents varied widely. Some of them were considered less than ideal. This wasn't the sort of sound that Hollywood wanted to sell or could sell widely in America or abroad. At the same time, Britain was coming off its own golden age of global colonisation, and the accent of its ruling educated class had all the airs of status, class and affluence. So, the Americans tried to find an accent that fit somewhere in between the general American accent
See, I was sitting there waiting for the fellas. We were going out.
and Britain's received pronunciation.
With even more quaint and impressive pageantry.
So, how did they bridge the gap? Well, they just made up a whole new accent.
You can't think of what one misses by leading a safe and sane American life.
No one spoke this transatlantic or mid-Atlantic accent naturally. It had to be taught, and its popularity came down to one of Australia's lesser-known Hollywood exports. His name was William Tilley. Tilley was born in 1860 in Sydney's inner west. He went on to become a teacher in Ironbark, Dubbo and Wellington in New South Wales before moving to Germany, England and New York, building a reputation as a master of linguistics and phonetics. It was about this time that the transatlantic accent was being taught in elite schools on the American East Coast. It had a very particular sound.
So it's really distinguished by things that you don't tend to find much of in general American speech these days. So car, not the American car.
What do you think you're doing?
I'm trying to unpark my car.
T's are generally pronounced in the middle of words. So a word like winter will be pronounced like winter with that T sound, rather than the more classic American winner. So that's another difference you've got.
Faith, jealousy, love, hatred, life or death.
It's not clear exactly who invented this accent, but William Tilley certainly popularised it through his teachings and his students and followers who held influential positions. This way of speaking was adopted by Franklin D. Roosevelt and his wife Eleanor.
We must want our fellow human beings to have rights and freedoms.
Jackie Kennedy Onassis.
What changes, if any, have you made in the White House since you moved in?
I really haven't made many, Mr. Van Oka, because one can't. It doesn't belong to anyone but to everyone in this country.
And Julia Child.
Green salad, some French bread, and a nice chilled rosé wine.
The transatlantic accent also came to be adopted by theatre actors in the early 20th century. Tilley's coaching technique became known as the Tilley method, and it made him one of the most prominent speech trainers in the US, just as talking films were gaining a mass audience. There was also a political dimension. These films were a form of soft power, fitting perfectly with America's ambitions for diplomatic transnationalism, of speaking not just to itself, but the rest of the world. So, as the aspirations of American politics, its aristocracy, theatre and silver screen collided, that accent, professionalised by the Tilley method, went everywhere as a form of world English, a standardised dialect that sounded less provincial.
Look, it's everywhere in films from those decades, from the 30s, 40s, 50s, and maybe even into the 60s. The interesting thing is that it's not very popular outside of film. It's not a naturally occurring accent, and it goes away very quickly.
After World War II, things started to change. The transatlantic accent came to stand for elitism and inauthenticity.
The emergence of new types of cinema that are more local, that aim to show particular American experiences or particular British experiences, the decline of the big studio system, a broader embracing of regional accents, an idea, I guess, an acceptance that variety is good and to be encouraged. And when you think about a lot of the classic leading men and women of the next couple decades, you are getting, I guess, real, genuine American speech, and maybe audiences connected with that.
The transatlantic accent still pops up every now and then on screen.
What have you done with those plans?
Wouldn't miss it for the world, though, would you? I'll be there at 7 with a cheeky Bordeaux.
Yes, I'd like to send this letter to the Prussian consulate in Siam by aeromail.
Yeah, it's interesting. It does become stereotyped. It's a bit stuffy, a bit older, or maybe prestige as well. The other thing I'd say is that people who didn't get the transatlantic accent in its heyday is kind of interesting too. African American actors often didn't have it. They weren't expected to have this prestige form. The sort of southern hick archetype was still very much in Hollywood. So not everyone gets this accent. Not everyone gets this prestige.
The days of standardised speech in American film and television are long gone, but William Tilley's mark on early American cinema can't be missed. And the changing sound of Hollywood gives filmmakers today food for thought on which voices and faces get to tell stories.
And finally, let your voice and speaking manner reflect your own personality. Let it be sincere and typical of you, rather than stilted and stagey.